Here's your video for lesson 6. For the freshmen, we had a class called the math class, similar in JavaScript. So a lot of this will be review for you. Lesson 6 is on the math class. Java provides a class that contains methods that are similar to functions found on your graphing calculator, such as the ability to take the square root or take a number to a power, such as x to the y. We will, in the future, use some of the trig functions and logarithm functions as well. This will be difficult for the freshmen to do because they haven't learned that in math yet. Now remember, what is a method in Java? A method is a set of code which is referred to by name and can be called or invoked at any point in the program by utilizing or using the method's name. Think of a method as a subprogram that acts on data and often, but not always, returns a value. Each method will have its own name. We often use documentation found online in something called the Java API, and I will demonstrate that when I demo on Friday, or in textbooks to understand what is returned by a method and what information in the method needs to work properly. And we'll talk more about that on the next page. So method documentation uses or provides the signature of a method or method declaration. So we're going to kind of focus in on the method signature for square root. The first thing you see out front is the word double. That tells us the return type. So in other words, when I take the square root of a number, it is going to return a double to me. SQRT is the method name of the square root function in the math class. Then there's a set of parentheses. So what's in here is what is required by the method for it to work or what it needs. So when you see something like double x, it means you need to put a double in there, not two things, just one thing. So in other words, the square root method wants you to put a double in between parentheses. And then when we call the method, it will take the square root of this number. So this is the documentation of the method signature. It's not how it works in Java. I'll show you that next. So to use the square root method, we have to do the following. We say math with a capital M, dot, which tells Java we're calling a method, then the method name SQRT, a set of parentheses, and in here, inside the parentheses, we put a number. So here's an example. So perhaps we have an integer x equals 4, and I meant to label it this x right here, and I forgot. Now, we know from above that when we call square root, it's going to send us a double. So I've declared this variable ans1 to store the answer. I'm setting that equal to calling the square root function math.square root of x. So I'm taking the square root of the value of x, which is 4, and we know the square root of 4 is 2. So notice that ans1 is a double, so in that location in memory, we store a 2.0. If I don't want to declare a variable and use a variable, I can also just put a number in there. So I've declared another variable ans2, that's a double, and I call the square root method, and I put 123.45 in there, and I store it in the variable ans2, and this number here is the square root of 123.45. Now, here's a list of methods you are responsible for the quiz. You will be given this exact table for the quiz as found on page 6.1 in your notes. So not only do I give you a little reminder of how to use this documentation, but here's the name of the method right here. Here's the signature. So let's look for square root. Here's what we looked at before, double, square root, double. So this is the signature. This is telling you what gets returned by the method, the name of the method, and what you need inside the parentheses for the method to work. If you're unsure about what it does, here is some comments over here. So like if you look to square root, returns the square root of x. Now, another thing that Java provides are constants in the math class. A constant we often use in math is pi. So like we learned in the last lesson, constants their names are all capital. So this time it's not a method, so there's no parentheses. I'm going to show you how this works. So for example, let's say we wanted to find the circumference of a circle that has a radius of 3. And we know from our math background, circumference is 2 times pi times r. So here's a way to do that. Declare a variable where we will store the circumference. That's a double, CIRC. And you set that equal to 2. Math.pi will give you a value for pi, since that's a constant, times 3. And that was the radius. So 2 times pi times r. Whenever you need pi, I would recommend you use math.pi. Here's another example that I will be demoing. Let's say I wanted to calculate 4 to the 5th power. So I'm going to use this method called POW. And it needs 2 numbers, a double B and a double E. So basically what this is going to do is take B to the E power. And if you look back on the documentation, that is exactly what it says by POW. What does POW do? Returns B raised to the E power. So I've made a little example for you. Let's let B equal 4 and E equal 5, like my example. And using variables, I can say that double ANS 3 equals math.pow B comma E. If I don't want to use variables, of course, I can just use numbers, math.pow 4 comma 5. That'll take 4 to the 5th power. And here's another example with different variables. If I say int x equals 4, y equals 5, double ANS 5, math.pow x to the y. I wanted to throw this in here because I didn't want you to think that you had to make this a b and an e. These are just variable names. We could have called it cat comma dog or orange comma apple, as long as up here I said int cat equals 4 and dog equals 5. So that's the end of the lesson. I'll be doing a demo on Friday, and we'll have a quick assignment after that. Then we're going to start looking forward to your quiz over lessons 4, 5, and 6. So that's all for now. Have a good night.